Hello class! I know that in this chapter you learned about mixed references, and I just wanted to take a moment and highlight mixed references again, because if you master the mixed reference, oh my goodness, your life will be so much easier at work. You will be so much more efficient. It's one of those things that once you get it straight in your head, you will find so many places to apply it. So let's go through it really quick. Here we have a little budget form, simple budget form, one sales number, a few expenses, and it's Jordan's Jewelry Emporium. We're working on the annual budget. And so, of course, we want to fill out the budget as thoroughly and as efficiently as we can. So let's go start this. Down here, you'll see my set of management assumptions. Okay, so we have a starting sales number. We assume that each month sales will increase by a set percentage of 5%. Okay, no, I know it's not exactly like real life, but just go with it. And then we have these expenses down here, and we know from past experience that these expenses approximate this percentage of sales. All right, so advertising is typically 23% of sales. All right, everybody clear? Okay, so let's go on. So let's start populating our little budget table. So for January sales, that's nice and easy because we have that as a starting point. So we're simply going to say equals January sales, hit enter, and there we are. Okay, but what happens when we get over here to February? Well, in February, we need to look 1 month to the left, right? So this is a relative reference. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then I want to multiply that by 1 plus this 5% increase. All right, so let's look at our formula. The C6 is a relative reference that looks to the left of whatever cell I'm in. And so as I drag that across to March, April, and May, it's going to look 1 cell to the left. And so that's exactly the way it should be, right? That's exactly what I want. I want it to look 1 cell to the left. But what about this C18? Okay. If I drag this formula to the right to March, this C18 is going to be looking to D18 because it's a relative reference, and there's nothing in D18. So I need to lock that C18 down as an absolute reference, and I'm going to do that by toggling the F4 key. When I hit the F4 key one time, it makes both the column and the row absolute. I can toggle it again and it makes the row absolute, or I can toggle it one more time and it makes the column absolute. In this case, I need both the row and the column, so I just toggle it a couple more times. All right, let's hit enter. And there we are. February sales are January sales plus 5%. And I'm going to toggle over my cell until I get the black crosshairs, and I'm going to pull across all the way to December, and there are my sales. All right. Now, oh, I see I'm missing my total expense line, so I'm just going to add that in. I'm going to hit the auto sum button. Notice it went all the way to sales, but I can adjust it. Just hover over the corner. I can pull that down, hit enter, and I can drag that across. Oops, why didn't it drag? I'm not sure. Here we go. Okay, one more. All right. Okay, let's look at the expenses now. So in this case, advertising expense needs to look at let me back up. January advertising needs to look at January sales, and it's going to be about 23% of sales, right? So let's write that formula. Equals January sales multiplied by the advertising management assumption percentage. All right, so let's think about this. I can write this formula, hit enter, and drag it down. But what will happen? Because the C6 is a relative reference, right now in the position we're in, it's going to look to the 55,000 January sales. But as I drag it down to the utilities cell, it's actually going to look, it's going to change into C7 and be looking at the advertising number instead of the sales number, right? So I actually need to make this an absolute. Oops. I messed it up. Okay, hold on, here we go. Equals sales times advertising. Okay. If I make this absolute and toggle F4, okay, now it will only look at the January sales, and that's a good thing if I'm just dragging down, okay? But for maximum efficiency, I want to be able to drag it down and drag it across. So C6 absolute isn't going to work for me. But what will work is if I leave the column as relative and the cell as absolute. Okay, let's talk about this. By leaving the column relative, once I drag it across, it's going to then look at D6, which is what I want. In March, it's going to look at E6, which is what I want. Okay, so it works across. Now let's talk about working down. Okay, if I keep the column relative and the row absolute, when I drag this down, okay, because I'm still in the same column C, this formula for utilities will also be C, okay, but the 6 will be absolute, and it keeps looking back at this January 55,000. So this formula, or this piece of the formula, is done. Now let's look at the C19. For the C19, if I drag it down, it's going, because it's a relative reference right now, it's going to change to C20. All right, is that what I want? Why, yes, it is, because look, utilities needs to look at C20. Okay, so that's a good thing for dragging it down. But let's think about dragging it across. Now when I drag it across, it's going to look at D20, but there's nothing at D20, right? So in this case, I need to lock down the column so that it looks at column C. So I'm going to lock that down by adding the $sign in front of it, or making it absolute. Okay, so quick review again. In this part of the formula, I have a relative column reference and an absolute row reference multiplied by an absolute column reference with a relative row reference. All right, let's say enter. This should work. Okay, now I should be able to drag my formula down and drag my formula across all the way to December. Okay, and whenever we do something like this where we fill out a whole big section, okay, that's much nicer than writing individual formulas or even column by column or row by row formulas, right? We always want to go to the furthest cell away, in this case the diagonal cell away, and we want to double check our formula. So here we are in December, okay? My formula is looking at December revenue, N6, and that's being multiplied by C23 wages and salaries. So it works. And I know we spend a lot more time talking about it than if you actually did it at work, but it's thinking about whenever you have a field, a table to fill out, don't just think about, okay, I need to write a formula and be able to drag it down, because you don't want to duplicate and write 12 formulas, one for each month. Spend a few extra moments, think about the formula that you're writing in that very first cell, and then drag it across and down so that it works for everything. Okay, and believe me, it took us a lot longer time talking about it than what it'll take you to do it at work. So another nice feature about this is management assumptions may change over time, right? Maybe January sales, we get a better estimate of 63,000. I can change it in one place and it completely updates the budget. Maybe advertising, maybe we decided to take on a new advertising campaign that will increase advertising expense to 25%, but at the same time it'll increase our January sales, or we anticipate, to 75,000. Okay, we can do a lot of what if analysis once this table is built with correct formulas. It's just limitless what we can do. So anyway, that was it. It's one of those small things, again, that I tell you has saved me so much time at work. So just get it straight in your head and continued success. Thanks, everyone.